Tourism officials are quietly wondering what negative headlines around the globe will do to the number of visitors planning to come to London and to Britain in the future. Well, we took to the streets of Covent Garden in the heart of London's West End to see what some visitors to the capital have been making of the unrest.
We've seen nothing in the areas we've been, except on television, and which is a bit scary. No, I don't think there's any problem for tourists coming to London at the moment. They're all in the suburban areas, and it's still a nice city.
I think it's just like a crazy thing that's just happened. I'm not scared personally. I think London's great. I just think that some people here have done something that's so terrible to the city, but I still think London is great, and I would really recommend it.
I'm Esther, I'm from Israel. I'm coming from a country that is always a little bit noisy around us, so this is not an issue for me to keep tourism in the city.
Well, Twitter user Chris Kidd said that the BBC coverage is not encouraging him to come for a family tourist day in London. The economy has been concerning many people around the world. Stock markets very volatile over the past few days. They fell in early trading, but the volatility continues despite the decision by 4 European countries to ban the short selling of financial stocks. That comes at the end of a week in which leading European banks have seen big falls in their share price. We can talk about that to Bronwyn Curtis, Head of Global Research at HSBC, and to Lena Komileva, who is researcher at Brown Brothers Harriman. Thank you, both of you, for being with us. I think we should just explain what short selling is and how you can stop people doing it.
Yes, when an investor is selling a stock without owning it, it's considered to be taking a naked bet, a naked short against a particular company. In this particular case, French banks have found themselves in the midst of a classic run of banks on banks, which, if it continued, it would have become self-fulfilling, and it could have created quite a lot of stress in the euro area.
I think also, just to add to that, what it does mean also is that they're borrowing stock from holders such as the big investment funds, and they're using that and selling that and then buying it back. So they have it on own it on a temporary basis. It's not something that they owned and then they're selling, so they're actually leveraging up and making, and that makes it much more volatile.
Well, is it going to work? Is stopping short selling going to ease the concerns and the nervousness?
Well, I think that it's one of the things that will help calm the markets down. Look, I think one of the problems is the markets just got so nervous. The ranges, we've seen record ranges on the Dow, on the S&P index. We've seen gold accelerating higher. We've seen record outflows in emerging market equity funds. So what you really want to do is take a step back here and say, okay, let's try and calm these markets down with as many tools as we have got. This is one of them. If you can stop that short selling, then at least you may calm the market. It may be temporary, but you can actually calm the market a bit. I think also on the gold market, what we saw is the futures exchanges in the US actually increasing the margins, as we call it, the deposits that people trading on gold have to put down before they can buy or sell gold. So all of these measures are to help calm.
Indeed.
Lena Komileva, is this a measure which shows the weakness of governments?
Well, when governments cannot bridge a confidence gap in the market, they tend to over-regulate. And indeed, Bronwyn is quite right that we've seen this short-term regulatory measures that simply makes it impossible for investors to take an even greater position against French banks. I think in the short term, it has produced some positive headline action, as in market momentum, but there is really very little substance behind it, or very little market confidence. You see, what we have seen over the last several weeks is a major transition in the way that investors perceive global risk, global economic and market conditions. We've had weaker growth in the euro area, weakening growth in all the major economies of the world, including the US. We are also in an environment where the government's AAA rating is no longer guaranteed. The safety haven, the safety bet for global markets that stabilized conditions over the last 2 years is no longer risk-free. So this is causing a major panic and a major rethinking about global fundamentals. And in that kind of environment, Europe has proven to be the weakest link.
Well, Lina Komaleva, thank you very much indeed, and also Bronwyn Curtis from HSBC. Thank you, both of you. That all sounds very technical and esoteric to some, but of course it does have a direct impact on the things that we're covering here in Birmingham, because the insecurity, the financial difficulties, the lack of borrowing, that's been another financial question, another story that the government's tried to encourage banks to lend. They haven't been lending as much as small businesses wanted them to. All of that adds to a sense of insecurity and then nervousness. The United States has called on the government of Sudan and Khartoum to open up the region known as South Kordofan to international agencies. The area lies on the Sudanese border with the new neighbour, the Republic of Southern Sudan, which broke away from the north. But that area is still administered from Khartoum officially. This latest criticism from the US follows a UN report which this week had allegations of extrajudicial killings in that region. I've been finding out more from one of those who compiled that study. He's Scott Campbell. He's from the UN Human Rights Office.
We document very serious violations of human rights and international humanitarian law committed primarily by the Sudanese armed forces, but also by the Sudanese People's Liberation Army North. This is the northern wing of the SPLA.
Which is in effect the army of the southern Sudanese, now independent republic.
Yeah, it's a branch of the SPLA that is now located in the north that has an affiliation with the south, but the exact nature of their relationship is a bit unclear to me today.
What kind of abuses, what kind of attacks on civilians?
We've had grave accounts of extrajudicial killings, arrest and detention, aerial bombardment of civilian areas, forced displacement, homes burnt. A wide range of very serious allegations have been brought to our attention.
Southern Kordofan is one of those three areas that are in a special relationship to the separation of North and South Sudan. Who is trying to mediate and make sure that these areas, I think Blue Nile is another one, Abyei is the third, that these areas do in the end reach a settlement?
Well, the United Nations is heavily involved, as is the African Union. There has been a preliminary agreement between Sudan and the Republic of Southern Sudan concerning Southern Kordofan. Unfortunately, that agreement hasn't come into full force. But the United Nations has a special envoy who's appointed by the Secretary General that has the lead on those negotiations from our perspective.
The Sudanese government in Khartoum says this report is repetitive and wrong. Again, it's inaccurate.
Well, we obviously feel otherwise, and our report is based on dozens of credible first-hand accounts of what has taken place. We've had numerous victims and witnesses describe what they saw themselves. Our own UN bases have been narrowly missed by aerial bombardments. Our own staff have been arrested, detained. Our own staff have been subject to mock executions. This is a very carefully documented report and put together with a great deal of care. We also were subject to very severe limitations on movement, and so the report is very careful in what we describe as allegations, and we note very carefully when an allegation is only been described by one witness, for example. So we're very confident of the information in this report and the way that it's presented.
That's Scott Campbell from the United Nations. Well, will the government in Khartoum now allow international agencies into South Kordofan to investigate freely? I put that question to Dr. Rabia Abdelati. He's from Sudan's Ministry of Information.
We don't believe that our government is committing any mistake or doing any crimes. I don't think that there is any reason for intervention of UN or any foreign agent or institution to be involved in such domestic issue, which is not concerning except Sudan government, because Sudan government is now working to achieve peace and to defeat the rebels that they are violating the rules and the constitution, and they are working against the security and peace for the people. And I don't think that this is from the mandate of the United Nations Security Council.
Is Sudan a member of the United Nations?
Yes, Sudan is a member of the United Nations.
And signatory to its conventions on human rights?
Yes.
So you can't accuse the UN of being a foreign agency then. You're part of it.
There is no abuse of human rights, and Sudan is respecting the international laws. But I don't think that even there is any reason, because everything is okay in our country.
Well, sorry, sir, but if it is okay, why not let the UN, of which Sudan is a part, investigate thoroughly as it is bound to do?
This investigation should be conducted with rebels and not with the Sudan government. Sudan government is now implementing and doing its responsibility to achieve peace for the people and to provide services and to create an environment of peace and security and stability for citizens. This investigation should be carried against the rebels who are against law, against the legal government that's elected by the people. And I don't know why United Nations Security Council is turning each and everything upside down.
Well, I can tell you why, because the Sudanese armed forces are alleged to be involved in some of these atrocities. For example, mock executions of the very UN investigators who went there to try and find out what's going on. This is the Sudanese armed forces, your own armed forces.
This is a repetition of the allegations of rebels. I know the United Nations Security Council just repeating what's said by rebels, and we.
Well, even if that's true, then why not let the UN go there and find out for themselves? You are not giving them free access.
No problem, but it should not come like that as allegations by United Nations Security Council.
Without investigating allegations, how do you prove or disprove them?
Well, actually, this accusation is coming actually from rebels, and how they are accepting the accusations of rebels and not respecting what reported by Sudan government. There is no impartiality in such allegation and such accusation, and I think that this is against the sovereignty which is actually acknowledged and recognized by the United Nations.
Dr. Rabia Abdulati from Sudan's Ministry of Information.